Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved brother Ranga. Namaste. We are on page, I have page 7 on mine, but you're page 3. We begin with yogic methods have something of the same relation to the customary psychological workings of man.
So, in the previous para, Srimad has told us that yoga need not be divorced from life. That's first thing he has told you. In fact, he makes a very fantastic statement. He says, all life is yoga. Because even nature, when she is evolving from matter to life to mind, she is also doing a yoga. Because yoga means union with the Supreme. And even nature is going step by step towards Supreme with the union with God. So now he is going to describe the yogic methods. I read the whole para first. Yogic methods have something of the same relation to the customary psychological workings of man as has the scientific handling of the natural force of electricity or of steam to the normal operations of steam and electricity. In nature, probably you have. I have only this much. Normal operations in nature, that's what you have?
Yes.
Okay. I have a slight difference text. And they too are formed upon a knowledge developed and confirmed by regular experiment, practical analysis, and constant result.
I have to read this one. And they too, like the operations of science, are formed upon a knowledge developed and confirmed by regular experiment, practical analysis, and constant result.
Okay.
It's almost the same, though. It's a little, they've added some things here.
Because I have this old book now, SABC, that's why.
We'll stay with your book, of course.
Now he starts listing the most common yogas. Raj Yoga, he's starting with Raj Yoga. Raja Yoga, for instance, depends on this perception and experience that our inner elements, combinations, functions, forces can be separated or dissolved, can be new combined and set to novel and formerly impossible workings, or can be transformed and resolved into a new general synthesis by fixed internal processes. Hatha Yoga similarly depends on this perception and experience that the vital forces and functions to which our life is normally subjected and whose ordinary operations seem set and indispensable can be mastered and the operations changed or suspended with results that would otherwise be impossible and that seem miraculous to those who have not seized the rationality of their process. And if some other of its forms, this character of yoga is less apparent because they are more intuitive and less mechanical, nearer, like the yoga of devotion, to a supernal ecstasy, or like the yoga of knowledge, to a supernal infinity of consciousness and being, yet they too start from the use of some principal faculty in us by ways and for ends not contemplated in its everyday spontaneous workings. All methods grouped under the common name of yoga are special psychological processes founded upon a fixed truth of nature and developing out of normal functions powers and results which are always latent but which are ordinary movements do not easily or do not often manifest. So, he's saying that just as in nature there is steam and electricity and science learns to deal with them, exactly in the same way, yoga also deals not with steam and electricity but with the three elements that you have. You have a body, you have a vital, and you have a mind. And it experiments and finds out the power inherent in these three things. And each yoga chooses one of these and discovers their secret power and uses it. That's basically what it is.
Does Raja Yoga, is it more complex or complete than Hatha Yoga?
Yes, because Raj Yoga is a very scientific method, and Raj Yoga is a sort of Jnana Yoga only. Okay, there are 8 steps. I'll just briefly tell you the steps that they are, so that you know. When we speak of yoga in India, most of the time it is Raj Yoga. Most of the time it is Raj Yoga. Hatha Yoga is very rare. Tantra is even rarer. Bhakti Yoga is okay. And Karma Yoga also is very common now, because modern life, you have to be constantly plunged in works and your daily life. You can't run away from your job in modern times. So Karma Yoga also is very, that's the reason why even the Bhagavad Gita is often taught in business management schools. How to deal with life and how to make your actions perfect.
So if you would put them in a hierarchical range,
Which one?
first Raja Yoga,
Raj Yoga requires a lot of time and effort. Okay, I would think that Karma Yoga is probably very widely used. Raj Yoga means you have to spend a lot of hours sitting in meditation and doing those. So those who have the means to do that, they can do that. But everybody doesn't have the means to do that.
and Bhakti versus Karma.
Yeah, Bhakti Yoga is also common, and Bhakti comes very naturally to the Indians. It comes very naturally to Indians and people like you. Okay, so he is going to describe. So now, I'll have a brief discussion of Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga is a very scientific method, and they start with very, very simple things. It starts with 8 steps. The first step is Yama. Yama means control. Okay? So, ahimsa, non-injury to other living creatures. Non-human, non-violence. Satyavachanam, telling the truth. Okay? Brahmacharyam, sexual purity. Shauchyam and Astyam. Astyam means non-stealing. So very, very simple moral principles. Okay? Then these are the things that you should not do. You should not harm anybody. You should not tell lies. You should not waste your sexual energy. And you should also not steal. So these are the things not to be done. Then there are niyamas. Niyamas are laws and rules which you have to observe. Okay? So those are cleanliness, worship, okay, concentration or austerity if you want, then dhanam, generosity, and study of the scriptures. These are the things you have to do. So very systematically is going, don't do these things, do these things, and then once you are morally pure, relatively pure, you start by studying the body first, then the vital, and then the mind. So you start the asanas. The asanas also is a way of making the body steady and not nervous and not fidgety. There is a lot of fidgetiness in the body very often, so that has to be cured completely. Asanas helps in that. Okay?
So one begins with the body.
But yes, that's right. You first begin with the moral principles and then you start with asanas. It's not that you go systematically one by one, but they can be also done together, but that's a base. So asanas is the base, and then after that you come to the quietening of the vital, pranayama. Pranayama is, many types of pranayamas are there, breathings, and each of these our breathing is very irregular. It's not steady and harmonious and homogeneous. So we have to learn how to breathe homogeneously, taking in breath and taking out breath, and even the gap between the two also is an important thing. Holding the breath. So, Puraka, Rechaka, and Kumbhaka. Puraka is filling in the lungs, Rechaka is taking out, and Kumbhaka is retaining the air in the lungs for a certain amount of time. And there is a relation between these three, and that has to be followed. It's a very interesting principle because even those who have asthma, asthmatic. I had asthma when I was young, and I was told to, if you breathe in 4 counts, you must breathe out 8 counts because the lungs must be emptied.
And you hold how many counts?
Yes.
How many counts do you hold?
Oh, that varies, but in the asthmatic treatment, that's not so important. But it is better to hold it because it allows the exchange of oxygen and the carbon dioxide to be thrown out. If you breathe too fast, then the exchange in the lungs from the blood, the function of the breathing in is supplying oxygen to the blood and taking out the carbon dioxide or whatever it is, the negative thing, and then you breathe it out. So Kumbhaka is necessary, is very important, very scientific method. Once you have been able to do this, morally pure and steady the body and make the vital as calm as possible, then you come to the mental concentration. Then only you are capable of mental concentration, not otherwise. A disturbed vital you will not be able to concentrate. So concentration also is in 3 ways. Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Dharana is the way to hold one thought in your mind. Concentrate only on one thing. Dhyana is meditation, and meditation means you are thinking along a line, but that line is consistent. There is no change of subject. If it is love, you are thinking only of love. There is movement in the mind, but it's continuous. A flow. Meditation. You are thinking of all the aspects of love. You are thinking of truth. You are thinking of whatever you want. But it's one smooth flow of thought. Samadhi is the non-movement of thought. Complete silence. There are different types of samadhis. Okay? Yeah, there are lots of different, 2, 3 different types of samadhis are there. But that's basically Raj Yoga. Okay? So Srimda is saying, he's telling you what the capacities of Raj Yoga are. For instance, depends on this perception and experience that our inner elements, the lower vital, the higher vital, the physical mind, the vital mind and the mind, these are all the inner elements. Combinations, functions, forces can be separated or dissolved, can be new combined and set to novel and formally impossible workings, or can be transformed and resolved into a new general synthesis by fixed internal processes. So, you can separate. We don't have a clear idea of what our mind and our vital is. But in Raj Yoga, you are able to distinguish this very clearly. And then you can combine these and get different types of results.
And how far has Raj Yoga attained?
Oh, any number of people have attained through Raj Yoga. But it has to be a sustained effort, and obviously it depends upon the amount of intensity you put in your effort. But Vivekananda has a whole book on Raj Yoga. Okay, he has described in great detail.
Who?
Vivekananda.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so so what are these things that he is talking about? You can master these things. Okay, so then he is telling you operations changed and suspended with results that would otherwise that's Hatha Yoga. Formerly impossible workings and can be transformed and resolved into a new general synthesis by fixed internal processes. You can make your mind so calm that you can get supra-mental knowledge, not supramental, supra-mental, above the mind. You can get knowledge, you can develop ESP, extrasensory perception, you can have clairvoyance, you can have clairaudience, which previously was not possible. That's what he's saying.
And did they achieve illumined mind, intuitive mind?
Yes, they can. Depends on the individual. Yes, they can. Raj Yoga can do all that. Because Raj Yoga is going into the higher levels of consciousness. Then he is talking about Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga similarly depends on this perception and experience that the vital forces and functions to which our life is normally subjected and whose ordinary operations seem set and indispensable can be mastered and the operations changed and suspended with results that would otherwise be impossible and that seem miraculous to those who have not seized the rationality of the process. He is particularly talking about breathing and the heartbeats. Okay, they have the power to suspend their breathing, which would have been impossible normally. You can also stop your heartbeats. Those things
I think
which
Ambu could do that.
Could he? I don't know.
I thought he could stop his breathing, but I don't know about
For how long is the question. So a Hatha Yogi can suspend it for hours without any ill effect. I knew of somebody in the ashram who could bring down his pulse rate from 80, he could bring it down to 30. I've forgotten who it was, but I once checked. Okay, they can do that. The blood pressure also they can control. So all these things are in the Hatha Yoga. And Hatha Yoga particularly, they can even suspend the law of gravitation for themselves. Levitation, that also is possible. Okay, so suspended with results that would otherwise be impossible and that seem miraculous to those who have not seized the rationality of the process. Okay, those who don't understand the laws that operate there, they will feel it a miraculous thing, but actually it's not miraculous at all. You're just applying, just as in science, applies the laws of physics and discovers the powers of steam, electricity, etc., etc. Similarly, in yoga also, you discover the powers in the body, you discover the powers in the vital, and you discover the powers in the mind. Okay? And if in some other of its forms, this character of yoga is less apparent because they are more intuitive and less mechanical, nearer like the yoga of devotion to a supernal ecstasy, or like the yoga of knowledge to a supernal infinity of consciousness and being. Yet, they too start from the use of some principal faculty in us by ways and for ends not contemplated in its everyday spontaneous workings. We don't think that the mind can develop these powers. Everyday working, we don't. Neither do we think that our vital also has got all sorts of powers. We don't use it. We use it only for breathing and your energy needs, and that's all. We don't think of the vital as having special powers, but it has special powers. Okay. One example is coming to my mind, that Swiss, he was a Jewish boy. His name was Uri Geller.
Yes, who could bend the spoon.
Yes. So ESP, with will, okay, it's a vital power. You put it out and you can bend. He used to bend the spoon.
But he wouldn't.
No,
he would do it just looking at the spoon. He could bend it.
Pardon?
He didn't have to use his fingers to bend it.
No, absolutely not.
Looking at it.
Yeah, the spoon would be there and he would just stare at it and it would bend. So some people who were a little doubtful about his capacity gave him a very thick rod. Okay, let me see you bend that. And he tried very hard, but it didn't bend. Next day it got bent. So it's an interesting detail, but that's what happened. Okay, so what Srimda is saying is, in the yoga of devotion and yoga of knowledge, it is less physical and less mechanical. In the Hatha Yoga and the Raj Yoga, it is quite mechanical. Psychological towards the end, but in the beginning, asanas, pranayama is all mechanical. physical processes. In Sri Aurobindo Yoga, entirely psychological. You begin with the idea of soul in mind. There is a soul in the body, there is a soul in the vital, there is a soul in the mind, and Sri Aurobindo says we'll start from there. And his three processes are constant aspiration, constant surrender, and constant rejection. So you have to use your mind mainly in Sri Aurobindo Yoga.
But you use the body for work also.
Pardon?
Mother says the body is one of the best ways.
That's the work.
Yes.
So in Sri Aurobindo Yoga, you do all, na? You do the Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. All the three. That's why it's integral yoga. You use the mind, but you start with the basic idea that you are soul in the mind. You don't pay so much attention to the body and the vital, that comes by itself. Okay, so they too started everyday spontaneous working. All methods grouped under the common name of yoga are special psychological processes founded on a fixed truth of nature and developing out of normal functions, powers and results which were always latent, but which are ordinary movements do not easily or do not often manifest. You have your body, but you don't think that the body has got special powers. But the Hatha Yogin discovers these powers to such an extent that he can even suspend himself in the air. Then the vital. The vital also has got tremendous powers. Okay? But we don't think of it that way. But Madame Theo could just sit in one chair and the sandals would come to her. She would get the sandals to come to her. So there is a type of vital power that you can get from the... There's a very interesting story about her. She was an occultist. No? And there used to be a tax man who used to come and bother them. Okay? A government official. And he was sitting on the one end of the table. So this lady had enough of this fellow. So she started, with her willpower or your vital power, she started pushing the table and pushed him into a corner. He got so frightened he never came back. These stories are all there, Mother has said in her.
And of course she could absorb a melon into her stomach without, and the melon would be still whole.
Right. She had the capacity to extract energy from flowers, from fruits. She used to keep it here and draw all the energy into it. Mother would draw energy from flowers. In fact, Sri Aurobindo says that I find it very easy to draw energy from nature. Okay? Sunlight, wind. It's easier for me to do that than through than through food. He fasted for 21 days and experimented to find out. There was no loss of energy. There was only loss of body mass. He lost weight. But he did not lose any energy at all. He was working full tilt. Okay? So that's what he's saying. So all your body has got powers, your vital has got powers, and your mind has got powers. And there are fixed processes for that. Just as in science also, science uses the power of matter, the power of the wind and sunlight, which is energy corresponding to the vital, and mental plane they have not yet explored, but they will soon come to that. So in other words, what Sri Aurobindo is stressing here is, yoga is not something mysterious and something unusual, and that is not there. It is all these powers are there in your body-mind life, and nature also has already exhibited these in matter, life and mind. Exactly as it is there, and science has learned to extract energy from all this, we can also do the same with our body, our vital and our mind. That's basically what he's saying. We go to the next para. But as in physical knowledge, the multiplication of scientific processes has its disadvantages, as that tends, for instance, to develop a victorious artificiality which overwhelms our natural human life under a load of machinery, and to purchase certain forms of freedom and mastery at the price of an increased servitude, So, the preoccupation with yogic processes and their exceptional results may have its disadvantages and losses. The yogin tends to draw away from the common existence and lose his hold upon it. He tends to purchase wealth of spirit by an impoverishment of his human activities, the inner freedom by an outer death. If he gains God, he loses life. Or if he turns his efforts outward to conquer life, he is in danger of losing God. Therefore, we see in India that a sharp incompatibility has been created between life in the world and spiritual growth and perfection. And although the tradition and ideal of a victorious harmony between the inner attraction and the outer demand remains, it is little exemplified. I think there is something to be.
Yeah, I have here little or else very imperfectly exemplified.
Yeah. Okay, or very imperfectly exemplified. In other words, the combination of a worldly life and a spiritual life is there. He is referring to the Gita. The Gita does not reject the physical world. It encourages you to action. In fact, when a man turns his vision and energy inward and enters on the path of yoga, he is supposed to be lost inevitably to the great stream of our collective existence and the secular effort of humanity. So strongly has the idea prevailed, so much has it been emphasized by prevalent philosophies and religions, that to escape from life is now commonly considered as not only the necessary condition, but the general object of yoga. No synthesis of yoga can be satisfying which does not, in its aim, reunite God and nature in a liberated and perfected human life, or, in its method, not only permit but favor the harmony of our inner and outer activities and experiences in the divine consummation of both. For man is precisely that term and symbol of a higher existence descended into the material world, in which it is possible for the lower to transfigure itself and put on the nature of the higher, and the higher to reveal itself in the forms of the lower. To avoid the life which is given him for the realization of that possibility can never be either the indispensable condition or the whole and ultimate object of his supreme endeavor or of his most powerful means of self-fulfillment. It can only be a temporary necessity under certain conditions or a specialized extreme effort imposed on the individual so as to prepare a greater general possibility for the race. He is referring very specifically to things. We'll discuss that. The true and full object and utility of yoga can only be accomplished when the conscious yoga in man becomes, like the subconscious yoga in nature, outwardly conterminous with life itself. And we can once more, looking out both on the path and the achievement, say in a more perfect and luminous sense, all life is yoga. So, he is telling you, basically what he is saying in this para is that in India, it is considered that worldly life and spiritual life are opposites. If you want God, you have to give up the physical world. If you want the worldly life, you have to give up God. That was the general idea in India until this point. And he says that no, there have been some things which combine both. Okay, he is particularly referring to the Gita, because the Gita definitely tells you not to give up action in the world. You must not give up action in the world, and you must not be attached to inaction. That's a Gita. Also, the Ishopanishad also very clearly says that action does not cleave to a man. It does not na karma lipyate nare. So, you don't have to, it doesn't necessarily bind you down. You can do works without being bound, without being attached to things. So the idea has been there, but the general idea in India has been, you want life, give it up. You want God, give up life. Put on the saffron robes and go to the Himalayas or the forest. Okay. Now Srimda says, if you want an integral yoga, that's not possible. You can't give up love. So we'll go through each one. Because the language sometimes is a little complex. Now, but as in physical knowledge, the multiplication of scientific processes has its disadvantages. Why? As that tends, for instance, to develop a victorious artificiality which overwhelms our natural human life under a load of machinery, and to purchase certain forms of freedom and mastery at the price of an increased servitude. So the preoccupation with yogic processes and their exceptional results may have its disadvantages and losses. So, he is talking of, we'll see, look at each phrase, okay? As in the physical knowledge, the multiplication of scientific processes. Let's take only two examples. Take the mobile, take the computer, your laptop, and take a washing machine, okay? It is certainly describing it as victorious artificiality. It is victorious because you have been able to conquer the problem of washing your clothes, going 100 miles to talk to somebody, okay, and putting all your 25 books into one small tablet. So, victorious artificiality. It's an artificial victory. Interesting word he's
very interesting,
using.
yes.
Okay? And he's explaining why.
But the next one is a little more complicated.
Yes, I'll tell you. So, which overwhelms our natural human life under a load of machinery, and to purchase certain forms of freedom and mastery at the price of an increased servitude. When I depend on my washing machine, I become a slave to it. If that fails, then I am in difficulty. So I have to use it. If my mobile conks out, then I have to go all the way. Okay? So I become a slave to my mobile. So that's what he's saying. Increased servitude. Machines give you, a load of machinery gives you artificial victory, but it's not a total victory. Sometimes it can fail, and then you have the problem of you don't have the means. You are a slave to these things. That's what he's saying.
You have to explain to us the disadvantages and losses.
Huh?
The disadvantages and losses.
That's right.
That's very important.
That's what he means. Okay? It's got its advantages. Certain forms of freedom. Okay? The freedom of sitting down in a bathroom and washing your clothes. You don't have to do that. You don't have to walk 5 blocks to talk to somebody. You just pick up the mobile and talk to him. Okay? So that's it. So that's a forms of freedom and mastery at a price. And what is that price? Increased servitude. You become a slave to your devices. Okay? So, the preoccupation with yogic processes and their accepted results may have its disadvantages and losses. Okay? So, one thing, we'll discuss disadvantage and loss. Disadvantage, you have to use a lot of time. So, it's a disadvantage. You have to sit for meditation. I know of a yogi who used to sit for meditation 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. You can develop yourself with that time. You can do other things. You can read books. You can do this. You can do that. Okay? You can do exercise to keep your body fit. You can do so many things. But it's a disadvantage. And what about the losses?
Yes.
Okay? And their may have its disadvantages and losses. If I am doing Jnana Yoga, I lose bhakti. If I am doing Bhakti Yoga, I lose the knowledge aspect. So losses are also there. Okay? That's what it's meaning. So how to avoid, how to do yoga without loss and without disadvantages? Integral yoga. Okay? the yogin tends to draw away from the common existence and lose his hold upon it. He tends to purchase wealth of spirit by an impoverishment of his human activities. In other words, you are spending so much time doing meditation and puja and all that you don't develop yourself in the physical world. Okay. Suppose Einstein were doing yoga, he would not have discovered this fantastic thing which revolutionized science. So that's what he's saying. Okay. Impoverishment of his human activities. Your worldly life becomes impoverished. Okay? You are not a productive element in society. You are not doing anything useful for society. The inner freedom by an outer death. The inner freedom you get. But the outer death, your success rate in the physical world is gone. That's what I mean. Okay? If he gains God, he loses life. Or if he turns his efforts outwards to conquer life, he is in danger of losing God. Therefore, we see in India that a sharp incompatibility has been created between life in the world and spiritual growth and perfection. And although the tradition and ideal of a victorious harmony between the inner attraction and the outer demand remains, I told you he is referring to the Gita and the Isha Upanishad. So ideas have been there, but it is little exemplified and little or else very imperfectly exemplified. You really don't find many people practicing the Gita or things like that. Okay, that's what I mean. In fact, when a man turns his vision and energy inward and enters on the path of yoga, he is supposed to be lost inevitably to the great stream of our collective existence and the secular effort of humanity. The secular effort of humanity, suppose you have got very special talents, okay? If you are going to do yoga, those talents will not get expressed. Otherwise, you can become the head of Google, you can become the head of Microsoft, all these things you can do. So, that doesn't get done. You get inner freedom, but outer death.
I have an interesting story from my voice teacher. She told me not to go to India. She said, Yehudi Menuhin took up yoga and his violin playing suffered.
Yeah. So that's what he
Interesting.
Yes. But Srivamdasa says that which has been denied can be done. It's more difficult, but it can be done. Okay, so in fact, when a man turns his vision and energy inward and enters on the path of yoga, he is supposed to be lost inevitably to the great stream of our collective existence and the secular effort of humanity. In India, it's very common. You want your children to be a doctor or an engineer or enter the IAS, okay, and become an officer in the government. But he doesn't, he just loses all this and goes and becomes a yogi. So that is no success in the physical world. So that's what, if you want that, you lose this. Okay? So he's saying, and secular effort of humanity, if you have special talents, if you can invent something, if you can, you don't have the time to do it because you are doing yoga. That's what he's saying, basically. That's why I gave you examples of Google and Microsoft. Both are Indians at the highest level. Okay. Yes. Sundar Pichai is one, and the other is Nadella. Okay. Even in the financial field in America, with Wall Street and others, the top finance men are very often Indians. So strongly has the idea prevailed, so much has it been emphasized by prevalent philosophies and religions, that to escape from life is now commonly considered as not only the necessary condition, but the general object of yoga. If you want to do yoga, until now the idea was, leave the world. You can't do yoga with bird. Not possible. Too many distractions. That was the idea. So I'm just countering that idea now. Okay, so No, now he is talking about the synthesis of yoga. No synthesis of yoga can be satisfying which does not, in its aim, reunite God and nature in a liberated and perfected human life, or in its method, not only permit but favor the harmony of our inner and outer activities and experiences in the divine consummation of both. It is possible to become perfect inside as well as your outer action also will be fruitful and useful to society. That's what he's saying. So, if you want that, you have to synthesize all the yogas. If you do only Jnana Yoga, no bhakti. If you do only bhakti yoga, you may not have knowledge. If you do only this, then you are limiting yourself to that. So, synthesis of yoga, you have to combine everything. Okay? And he's saying not only permit but favor. You must think that it is possible to combine the inner and the outer activities and find a divine consummation for both. The word consummation is one of Sri Aurobindo's favorite words. It means the successful completion of something, to consummate something. Children in our school, they often confuse between consummation and consumption. So I have to explain to them that the two words are completely different. Okay, so that's why you say it's not consummation, it's consummation. Okay, then we come to the, for man is precisely that term and symbol of the higher existence descended into the material world, in which it is possible for the lower to transfigure itself and put on the nature of the higher, and the higher to reveal itself in the forms of the lower. This is possible only in man, because man has got a soul, and you can ascend to the higher levels of consciousness. The animal can never do that. Man can do it. So, evolution in nature becomes conscious when man comes into the picture. So, you can transcend your limitations and go into the higher. He's talking of the higher hemisphere. And in man, the higher powers of the divine can come into the body-mind life. That also is possible. Ascent and descent. Most of the yogas, they don't bother too much about the descent. They only want the ascent. In India, you want liberation. Get rid of your body-mind life and go up. Be happy. But Sri Aurobindo is talking of descent. You open yourself and the light and the power and the bliss enter into you. That's the difference. The others are not interested so much in transforming body-mind life. Too rigid, too imperfect, impossible to change the body, impossible to change the perverse vitality. And the mind is full of darkness, not possible. Don't bother about it. Too much waste of time. Throw it out. Just escape from there. Escape from the prison and be happy. That's moksha. Mukti is the aim of yoga. Until now it has been the norm. But not anymore. Now it's becoming quite common now to understand that karma yoga is more important than those traditional yogas. Okay? So, it can, but even in the integral yoga, can you withdraw from life? So, Sri Aurobindo is saying, it can only be a temporary necessity under certain conditions or a specialized extreme effort imposed on the individual. I'll finish the sentence and we'll come back to each one. So as to prepare a greater general possibility for the race. So he's talking of his own case. Okay. So first is, it can only be a temporary necessity under certain conditions. Suppose I have an activity which is not allowing me to concentrate within. Okay. Suppose I am an inventor. All my energy I have to put in how to invent this thing. So I can't have enough time to concentrate. So temporarily I can suspend the outer activity and concentrate more on the inner. So you are giving up your activities in the physical world, but in a time frame, not permanently. That is allowed, same way saying. Okay. Suppose I am an athlete. I have to go on training and making myself perfect and keep my body in perfect shape. But if I am interested in yoga, many athletes are interested in yoga also nowadays. Okay, so they can temporarily suspend those or reduce the activity. That is allowed. Or there is something else which Sri Aurobindo is talking about himself. He is saying, or a specialized extreme effort imposed under certain conditions, okay, imposed on the individual under certain conditions, or a specialized extreme effort imposed on the individual. He is referring to himself. Sri Aurobindo had to give up all contact with the outside world and withdraw into himself so that he could bring down the supermind. He did not want any distractions, because if you open yourself, you are subject to all the incoming forces. Physical forces, vital forces, mental forces, even hostile forces from other worlds. They also come and disturb you all the time. So he wanted to withdraw himself and keep himself. No more touching and no more even blessings. Okay, 1926. He put mother in charge and he withdrew. After that, no more. Earlier than that, people used to go bow down to him, he would bless them and all. But no contact after that. Very rare he used to meet people. 2-3 examples are there. One, Cartier-Bresson was allowed to take pictures. Then there was this French gentleman who came. Okay, he was a representative of the French government. He met Sri Aurobindo. Dilip Kumar Roy met him once. But can you imagine Amal Kiran, who was supposed to be such a ardent follower of Sri Aurobindo, after he withdrew, he never met him personally.
You know what he told me? Amal told me. He said, we never thought he would die.
Yeah.
And so there was no urgency to meet him. Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. But the world conditions were not ready. So that's what happened. Okay? So, you are allowed to withdraw from physical activity temporarily, or if you have a very special work like Sri Aurobindo. He had a special work. None of us have such a special work. So we should not do that. I know one particular boy here who stopped going to the department because he says that we are allowed to do that. But that's an exaggeration. Because you are not doing any work that is disturbing your yoga. You are doing a desk job. You better continue with that. So Sendhu is saying under exceptional circumstances. Okay? So,
so the greater general possibility for the race.
Very clearly the supramental.
Very clearly.
Bringing down the supramental.
Yes.
Very clear. Okay? The true and full object and utility of yoga can only be accomplished when the conscious yoga in man becomes, like the subconscious yoga in nature, outwardly conterminous with life itself, and we can once more, looking out both on the path and the achievement, say in a more perfect and luminous sense, all life is yoga. Now, we'll look at each, it's very interesting. We'll look at each one, what he's saying. The true and full object and utility of yoga can only be accomplished when what is the full object of utility of yoga? Realization of the divine in the individual, but also the evolution going towards God. That also is important. Okay? So that's what he's going to say afterwards. The can only be accomplished when the conscious yoga in man becomes like the subconscious yoga in nature. Subconscious yoga in nature, 4 words, you can replace it with evolution. The subconscious yoga in nature is evolution. It's going towards nearer and nearer to God. Okay. Outwardly conterminous. Conterminous having same boundary. Not separated, but having a common boundary. Okay. Conterminous with life itself. And we can once more, looking out, once more. Why is that? Because he has told you that the Gita already had that idea. So even once more is meaningful. And the Isha Upanishad also had. So now we can revive that ancient thing and make it more common. That's what it means. See how accurate Sri Aurobindo is? He need not have used the words once more. But the tradition was there in India, now once more we do that. Beautiful. Looking out both on the path and the achievement, say in a more perfect and luminous sense, all life is yoga. You need not make a distinction between worldly life and the spiritual life. In India, we use the word samsara for the physical world. Nothing to do with the spiritual life. That was the idea. But not anymore. Okay. Somebody asked mother, what is the difference between worldly life and spiritual life? Mother was very categorical in her answer. She said, there is no difference. Yoga can very well be practiced in the physical world. So there we are. So Swayambhu's yoga, no running away from the physical world. By the way, Tantra also does not run away from the physical world. Okay? Rather, they go to another extreme. They do things which they should not be doing also. So, in fact, Tantra and Swayambhu's yoga have got many things in common. 3 things in common. First of all, not running away from the physical world. Number 2, worship of the Divine Mother, the energy aspect of the Divine. You are surrendering to the Divine Mother. Swayambhu used to constantly say, refer everything to Mother, she will do all your work. And the third, Ananda is the aim of life. They are afraid to enjoy. You should not be afraid to enjoy, but you have to enjoy without attachment and without desire. But Ananda is the aim of life.
Thank you, Ranga. Namaste.